Coley, if you would note that all the commissioners are present.
So noted.
Commissioners, before we begin our business today, I'm appointing Bill Coley, KUB General Counsel, as Secretary of the Board and for further notice in accordance with KUB bylaws, section Roman numeral 7, item D.3. I'm doing this because Mark Walker is a candidate for the position of President and CEO and will therefore not serve as Board Secretary during the selection process. Appreciate you serving in that capacity, Bill. Commissioners, for our other business today, we're going to review the candidates who have applied for the position of President and CEO and determine those who will be interviewed through official action. We will then need to determine the format for the structured interviews of the candidates, including the time allocation and draft questions. I believe that we have received 4 resumes. My recommendation is that we interview all 4 of those candidates. Well, I think we have to have a motion for that, but if we want to discuss that any further, we can. We don't have any visitors here who want to speak to this resolution, so all I need is a motion and a second.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Coley, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Askew. Aye. Commissioner Hamilton.
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert.
Aye.
Commissioner Fennell.
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Small. Aye. Commissioner Ward. Aye.
And so that is Resolution 1380
Passed.
has passed, and we're going to interview 4 candidates. We've had some issues come up with regard to an interview schedule, and in your materials today, there is a couple of different options. I know that some people are fresher in the morning. I certainly am. So if you all want to look at those options and discuss what works best for you all, I'm all ears. We've got 30 minutes for discussion before the interviews begin each day, 1.5 hours for the interview, and 15 minutes for discussion after each of the interviews.
The options show up on a piece of paper that looks like this.
Yeah, option 1 is all the interviews in one day, and we would have to do that on August the 14th. Option 2 is 2 interviews on the 13th and 2 on the 14th, and any follow-up interviews on the 15th. In order to publicly notice each day, we have to agree on a start time on each day, and I think we should probably notice 9 a.m. on the 15th. If we decide to cancel that meeting, then we can do that.
I would prefer to split it over 2 days in the mornings. I think that puts us kind of on the same playing field with both sets of candidates, and
Yeah, that would be my recommendation as well. Those 2 days versus the first day, because I think you're fresher. I think you're more alert, astute if you can do it over 2 days versus the first candidate. By the time you get to the 4th candidate, you've been there a long time, and so it's just
I agree with that.
so. Do you need that in the form of a motion, Madam Chair?
I don't think we do have to have a motion for that. I think we can just agree to do day 1 will be 2 interviews. We'll start at 8:30. We'll talk about our format, and then at 9 we'll have the first candidate, and 10:45 we'll have the second candidate, and the same schedule for the following day. I did think it would be fairer for the order of the interviews to make it random. And so we're just going to have each candidate draw out of the hat who's number 1, 2, 3, and 4, rather than, make it alphabetically or whatever. It'll just be, the luck of the draw does anybody feel any different about doing it that way?
I think that's a good idea.
That's good.
I think we're going to use the executive conference room, and we'll set up the security in order to use that room, because this room is just not really effective for, you know, a discussion, which I think is what we anticipate we're going to be having with folks. It's more effective for presentations versus, you know, the give and take that I think we're going to have in these.
Question for you, Madam Chair, for the day of the third day, we won't meet the third day unless something happens.
Unless we determine at the end of the day, on the 14th, that, you know, some issue could have arisen on that second day, and that we might want to circle around to one or more of the candidates, and that would just give us the flexibility to do that. I think for the public notice purposes, go ahead and notice all 3 days. If we don't use one, we can always cancel it.
And hold that for the morning from 9 to noon.
Correct, from 8:30 until 12:30 each day.
I mean, for the third day.
Yes, the third day,
Just the morning. Okay.
yes. Draft interview questions. We've got some draft questions to look at. Before we get into the specifics on those questions, how do you all feel about basically giving time at the beginning and end for sort of an opening and a closing? I'm a lawyer, and so that makes sense to me, but, you know, the rest of y'all in the business world may think that's a dumb thing, but, you know, sometimes you want to get something out, and then at the end, if you feel like, you know what, I really wanted to talk about this, but I never got a chance to, then you have an opportunity to circle back around to something that maybe the candidate wanted to emphasize, but didn't have an opportunity to do so with the questions.
And I think you really get a sense of where they are going, where they want to go with what they choose to say in their opening comments. So I think that's a good thing.
The questions we want to remain confidential. You know, I think it's really imperative that we try to make this as a level playing field as possible. And I know that, you know, it's really not it's more in our nature to be more transparent, but in this situation, I think that in order to make sure that no one has an advantage, is that we keep these questions confidential. Does anybody have any comments about maybe one of these questions or more of these questions that you might say, you know what, I don't really want that question?
Celeste, on question 15 on page 4, the question, if you weren't selected, who do you think will qualify to be the CEO? I think we don't know whether we're going to have an audience for these interviews or not. And having them spread over 2 days, it's even possible that we may have an audience part of the time and not an audience the rest of the time. And personally, I think that asking this question when it's a little difficult anyway, and especially if there's an audience there, I think that's really going to be very uncomfortable. And because I'm really concerned if we start out and ask that the first time because we have a room that's just us. We may not ask it a second time because there may be outside folks in the room. And so I think that's kind of not fair. So just personally for that reason, I'd prefer to take that off the table. I may be the only one that feels that way, but
Totally agree.
that's my rationale.
Totally agree.
Well, I agree with you that if we're going to take a question off the table, it's not fair to the person that had to answer it. if we do that. So I think that's probably a good idea, is to remove 15.
I have a question about the employee survey. So, you know, if they could have answered that question in that employee survey, correct?
Could
So
have.
We can maybe assume that they had the ability to respond in that manner, and that's how we receive that, their input.
Every single employee received an email and a form, and they could have used either.
Okay, so,
We're not striking the entire 15, just
Just
that
that
part
portion,
of
just
the
that
italics.
portion.
Just the italics.
And still on question 15, to me, that question should be maybe one of the first questions we ask, because it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the interview, in my opinion.
So shift that to which question, Adrian?
Two.
Put it
Yeah,
between 1 and 2.
yeah, most things I'm a part of, that's a number 2 question.
Like that. So can somebody explain to me the thought behind it? How will you feel if you aren't successful?
If you aren't chosen, maybe that's how it should say.
Okay.
If you are not
Selected for this.
selected.
Okay. I think that's probably better.
Yeah, I don't think successful maybe.
one thing I wonder would be good to address is that we've got the job description. Do we ask if there's anything missing from the job description that we think that, you know, should be part of it? Because it's really, I mean, we're trying to get feedback, and these are the questions: how do you feel? What do you think about this? But one pointed question might be, you know, are these accurate in your opinion?
Trying to put I think that's a really good question. I'm trying to put myself in the position of that person who's being interviewed, and I think I would have to say, may I see the job description again, because I hadn't memorized it probably, and if we're willing to let them take a look at the job description, that'd be good, but that may slow things down. But I just, in my doctoral exams, one of the faculty members who didn't like me very well said, well, Mr. Askew, it appears you never got around to answering the second question on the second day. Would you like to elaborate on your response? And I said, may I see what I wrote? The last thing, I will continue to say that the last thing my advisor said before I walked in the room was, do not try to BS your way through this. So I looked at what I wrote, I looked at my advisor, and I looked back over her, and I said, that's everything I know. So the question is, I think that would be an interesting discussion question. I just don't know that they would remember what was in the job description unless we handed it.
Yeah, because it's pretty long.
Yeah. I think I would feel the same way.
Okay. Because I think these questions really hit all of the areas of the job description.
But I think they follow the job description pretty well. I think Sarah's point, though, one of the things one of the questions is there anything we should ask you that we didn't?
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically that, because
Yeah.
I think when anybody's looking at job description, then you can, you know, I'm sure that they actually probably know it fairly well, and they're rehearsing their answers and stuff, but I want to know, it's like, we were interviewed the other day in a project we didn't win, and one of the questions was, and almost exactly that, so what if I missed? What else are you going to bring to the table?
I love that question.
And it was, I think the reason why we lost it, honestly, because they were looking for that extra kind of, you know, the wheels turning a bit more. I mean, I don't know for a fact if that's why we lost it, but I thought, well, that's a really good question, and we didn't answer it well.
maybe put that in as 17. Is there anything that, any qualification, maybe not related to the job description specifically, so we don't have to trot it out there. But
Yeah.
is there any kind of attribute that you think that the leader of KUB should have that we haven't touched on today?
Yeah.
I think I like that was a point question where closing remarks can be, thank you so much for, you know, the
Yeah.
opportunity, and really, I think it's that we're looking
Mhm.
for something extra,
I
but
think
not
that-
just
that's
for
a
them to
good point.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. You're hired.
The one word that I didn't see in here, I thought about it when I first read all these questions. One of the reasons why we talked about doing an internal search was because we liked culture so much. And we don't ask anything about the culture. Is there anything about the culture we would like to change?
To be honest, that was what I was trying to get to in 16 without going directly at it,
Okay,
to see if that would be the answer.
yeah, okay.
If you ask the word, they're gonna say.
That's a
yeah.
good point.
I was trying to see if that would.
They would bring that up.
Bring that
Yeah.
out.
That would be something that I
See.
would see as a yellow flag.
Yeah, if they
People
didn't.
didn't mention culture here.
So we will inform the candidates that they will have a few minutes for opening and closing?
I intend to meet with the candidates today after we conclude for them to draw their pieces of paper and tell them about what the interview format is gonna be, after we've decided on it. One other thing that I think we've got to make a decision about as a group as to whether we think that a rating sheet should be used. You know, one of the things that is in your notebooks in front of each candidate is the job description with a place for notes. And I don't know that I particularly like having to give a 1 to a 10 or,
I will tell you that in my experience, I've done it both ways. And on more than one occasion, the person who we feel like was the best candidate didn't get the best score. There was just something about, you know, because they might miss the culture question. And that's such a payout that they might have gotten better scores. And then you open yourself up, I think, if there's a request for, if you have these score sheets and then somebody sues you, sees the score sheet, and then they see they got better scores than the one who got hired.
Madam Chair, fine, all of this, any of your notes, any of your score sheets, you know, are all public record. Which doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but just do it with your eyes open if you're gonna do it.
Well, and I think we're trying to be objective on something that's very subjective.
Yeah. Well, because as you were asking that, I was thinking, when I score somebody, I've done something like this and done it where you had to use a score, and I will score somebody high because I thought they really knocked it out of the park. But then I come down to another candidate and I realize they've given a better answer. So then I'm going back to
Or give this
revisit
one
my
a 5, so now I gotta
score.
give this one a
Yeah,
5+.
because you don't know, and we're not gonna have all of them in one day. So I think there's a little bit of reflection that goes back and forth about that.
yeah, I don't think the rating necessarily, the rating at the time of the interview and the rating at the conclusion of the interviews could very well change.
Right.
Because it's
How
a
do we-
moving target.
How do we make the selection? What is the
a mechanism for, I mean, we just,
Somebody's gonna have to make
Somebody's
a
gotta
motion.
make a motion and then you gotta get a majority vote.
Okay.
Ultimately, it is an official action of the board. There'll be a resolution and somebody will make a motion and that name will.
somebody
be
could
filled
say, I
in.
nominate, you know, blah, blah.
I move that we hire someone, and then somebody will have to second it, and then we'll have to vote.
And it'll be a matter of record as to who's voted for who. It's not like a secret ballot.
That's correct.
So Madam Chair, so after we finish discussion, then, after we have exhausted our discussion, then you will ask if there is a nomination on the floor. You will ask for one of us to nominate, okay?
Well,
But
let me
that
ask
would,
this.
but that
would be-
has to be in an official board meeting, not in the interview meetings. Because those are not noticed as meetings where official action is going to be taken. So it
So-
has to be in our Thursday board meeting, or we'll have to call another meeting.
Special meeting.
Special meeting?
So, but we will have, I hope that we'll have an opportunity to talk among ourselves and say, well, what did you see strengths in this one or weaknesses in this? We can have those conversations.
Absolutely.
Before somebody, we don't have to have a motion on the floor before we discuss them.
I mean, I think we can pretty much make a decision, Mr. Coley. I mean, as long as we're in an open meeting,
Right. You just can't get together at the coffee house and do it.
but we could reach a consensus when we left here on the day of those second
Right.
interviews.
You can deliberate
It's
your
always some
decision, as
coffee
long as
on
it's
the
noticed, as long as it's open.
Yeah.
I mean, and it may be the kind of thing where we say, you know what, I really want to sleep on this, so I do want to come back for that third day and for us just to have a discussion.
Completely agree. I've been in situations where sleeping on it overnight
Changes
changes.
your mind.
Right. Because you're going to replay what goes on, you know.
But our discussion will be public record.
Correct.
recorded And all that.
No,
No.
no, we're not for later. We're not planning, because there will not be an official vote at the 3 meetings that are set up for interviews. There will be no public comment or recording of those meetings. Our bylaws do not require that, and it is my intent not to do that.
So
Unless directed otherwise.
If somebody is here and they hold their hand up, all I have to say is, I'm sorry, but this isn't a forum for you to give your comments.
However, if you come back in an official meeting and there's a motion and a second,
Then they
that will
can
be
comment.
called on before the vote.
So is our plan then to, at our August 16th meeting, to take an official, if we all agree and come to a consensus on the 14th, then we'll make that official motion, that official on the 16th, so that is when we're planning.
If everybody,
You're ready?
if
We're ready.
everybody's ready.
Okay, all right, on the 16th.
Is that your regular meeting?
Yes.
What's that? Yes, the right.
Well, that's good, because otherwise, I mean, they don't need to be waiting.
No,
Yeah,
it
I
doesn't
agree.
leave people hanging in the wind for weeks. You
So,
know.
if we never do that vote, then Minta has to stay. Is that
Well,
correct?
I read, that's what I read.
We'll figure it out.
She serves at our pleasure.
So this is council 16th.
There's a
So-
method
so
to
are
the
we
madness.
doing the
We will not have a
sheets?
quorum.
No quorum yet. Jerry.
Did we get a consensus not to do ratings sheets?
Does anybody feel strongly to do them? I think we've got a consensus not to do that.
When you said waiting, the first thing that came to my mind, which I was actually thinking of before you said it, was that each of these titles or these categories in the job description probably hold a bit more weight for each of us as individuals than other categories.
You're
And
exactly
so
right.
as I was going through the candidates, I was thinking about a pie chart, which one of them has this and that, and, kind of a visual thing. And I was thinking, which one is, what's most important to me?
I
Or,
was actually
you know,
thinking of the layout of the landscape, the
And really and truly, Sarah, for that very reason that you brought up, that's one of the reasons that I had suggested that, that material that came from the program about the different generations be sent to everybody, because I think it tells us not only about the candidates, but it also talks about our dynamics as board members and what's important to us versus, you know, on a generational basis. So I think you're absolutely right on that. And that was one of the reasons, and I know Adrian and Kylie got to see that in person, and people that have been to Leadership Knoxville, I think,
Yeah,
have
I've
seen
seen
it
that.
too.
He does a great job.
But it really hit home with me as to how different people think about different things. Are there any other questions that you all think should be included that are not included?
Can we say the questions? We can say what the questions are? Like,
Sure.
So like number 12, it says to please describe your view as a leader. I also want to ask them, you know, talk about your leadership and management style.
Your style.
Yeah.
I think that's if they don't say that, I think that's a good suggestion to have a follow-up question on Kylie. Describe your leadership style.
Sorry, I had that one too.
And you know, some of the people in their cover letters did try to
Right,
Yeah.
they did.
to address that.
Are we gonna go round robin on asking questions?
Yeah. I think everybody should participate.
What do you want to assign?
I'm a little concerned that if the discussion goes well, you may have too many questions. And I don't know how you'll know until you get into it.
Wherever we stop on the first one, we gotta stop on all the rest of them.
Well, structured interview means that you get, it's structured, but it doesn't mean you have to ask every single question, every single candidate, because sometimes you chase rabbits based on the answers to the questions.
I think that one of the challenges for me as chair is to try to keep a roadmap of that and circle back at the end for something that I don't think that we covered, so that we make sure that we hit each of these.
I think it would be important, though, group these in categories: operations, engineering, finance, that everybody gets questions from each category.
Mhm.
So,
Absolutely.
So question number one, about, you know, let's start with you briefly, and then you may want to ask specific questions about information on resume. When I see that, what I'm thinking about is, you know, each candidate has, you know, different lengths of duration here, lengths of when they were in certain positions leading up to this moment. And when I looked at that question, it's almost like I want to ask, give us just a succinct, what has prepared you specifically for this? I mean, so that they can say in their own words, not just tell us, you know, your education, work experience, but pointedly. Because I
That's
can
really
say
good.
in my background, this A, B, C, and D led to me being right here or over
I
there.
like that, because I don't wanna have to
Okay.
listen to the resume.
So,
You
yeah,
have already read
exactly.
the resume. That's
Exactly, so I
exactly
want to
right.
say,
Let's-
tell me tell me how you got here. Why are you, you know?
Can I
Oh.
give you a friendly amendment?
Yes.
So let's start with you briefly telling us about your education, work experience, and background, and how have those prepared you for this role?
Perfect.
We'll proceed.
And you might even you might lead in with the clause without repeating your resume, which we've already written.
Yeah.
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 Because then you're getting in their words, you know,
Okay.
this succinctly.
We've read your resume.
Right.
the point of the first question, frankly, in drafting interviews, is to try to set them at ease and let them start.
Oh, warm them
So
up.
it's something they already know very well, and it's to give them an opportunity to just talk.
Yeah.
And then you gotta get into more detail
And
questions.
that opening, I
And that
think,
opening does
also
do
gives
that.
them that
That's
opportunity
right.
too, to kind of,
Yeah, yeah, that opening is the warm up.
And we did talk about your role, circling back around, but there's also, to Memphis' point, just for example, if you said, looked at question number 8, they could very easily cite a question, the answer to question number 9 as a part of their answer to 8. So if
Absolutely.
they've already answered it, we don't need to.
You don't
ask
need to
it
get- you
We
again.
don't need to
Right.
get through it.
Yeah.
Do we want to assign question numbers today?
Sure.
I mean,
Well, would we keep those same assignments throughout the board?
I think so.
Yeah.
So Madam Chair, you have to start, so.
Okay.
I feel like this.
You want to do-
I'll do number 1 then.
Then 15 is the next one, right?
Yes,
And then 15.
15 is the next one, is the new number 2.
Are you going to redo these questions?
Yes.
basically?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll do number 2 then.
Okay.
And then a question about KUB corporate becomes number 3.
Yes.
So I'll take that. And I'll take number 4.
So then,
Put me in for, let's see, next one, I think.
Number 5.
5.
And 5.
Oh, wait, oh, wait, never mind.
Okay, so Kathy, you have what you, relationship to board, right?
Yeah, Adrian has it.
I have
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah, Adrian has that one.
So I guess I'll take 6, which is the former 5.
Who has 4? Who has the current 4?
John.
And we'll, I'm sure someone will give us a rundown.
Here's your question.
And so who's doing what is
It
listed as
doesn't matter.
5?
I don't just-
Tybee or Sarah?
Sarah. Pick one, tell me which one.
Then Ty does the new 7,
Yeah,
then you do the new 8.
yeah.
I do.
Sorry, I'm gonna take the liberty of my question anyway.
Although I tell you what,
Whatever the hell I want.
Kathy really, let's don't go in the same order.
Okay.
I think
Watch
Kathy ought to
everybody
take the
flip
lead
out.
on those financial questions. So,
I was
So I'll
afraid
do
I
the
didn't
new
get
8.
one. I was
Yes.
like, please don't give me
Okay.
And then I'll do the new 9.
okay.
Where's the tree question?
Yeah.
Do you love trees?
It's in operations.
Yeah.
How about that,
Adrian,
maybe
take
you
11.
should ask either the new 10 or 11, Sarah, the sustainability or conservation, which one of those would you like?
Either one. How about
Put 'em
conservation?
Okay,
Put them together, yeah.
Put together, yeah.
put them together,
Okay, so just tell me which one it is.
yeah.
Can I have 11?
Okay, Tybee?
So which one am I? So you,
Adrian, you have the old 3, new 4.
okay, all right.
And then it's your turn again, 4.
Why don't you let me answer that leadership,
Yeah.
to ask the first leadership question?
We're done.
And then maybe next for you, Adrian?
The new 14.
Yeah.
And we're back on the other side.
Yeah,
Who has 13?
Adrian. Who wants to do the old 14?
That was originally a Sarah suggestion.
Yeah, I'll be done.
Okay.
15's already moved to 2.
John will take the rest.
He's cleaned up.
Put me down for any questions anyone else doesn't want.
Since I have 3,
16.
you can take number, you
That's
can,
right.
you can take.
But I am drawn to 18.
Only if you answer all that.
I know, right?
You can take number 6.
So 6, who has 16? John.
We haven't assigned 16. Do you want it,
I
Tybee?
thought John wanted, you wanted another one, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, load me up. Whichever
You
one.
only had 1, so I was trying to give you 2.
I can ask anything. with-
Okay, we'll put John down for the old 16. Tybee, why don't you take the new 17?
Which is what?
Is there any attribute of a leader for KUB that we have not discussed today?
Okay.
Even though that's kind of Sarah's question, but it's okay.
Oh,
I
We'll let
understand,
you,
but I'll take it.
we'll let you close your eyes out.
And you'll give me that new
There's
question
got
right
to have
now.
the interview anyway.
And then I'll kind of do the concluding questions.
Yeah, it's good.
One question, partially a question, partially looking for some input. It's like this position, there's an element of it that's communicator in chief that is unique to this position. It's not present in the other. That there's just a special role that the CEO has to play with stakeholders, the community. The microphone just ends up in front of their face. But more so than that, with the blueprint, communicating, being able to communicate effectively the greater mission, the culture and all that. You can have a great culture, but if the CEO can't communicate it and can't demonstrate it, and how they address employees and their fellow staff and all that. So I was just kind of looking, it seemed like some of these questions kind of get to that, but there's a skill set that's tied to that, and I don't know how to, it's kind of one of those things where these are people we know, and some of it is inherent, that it's either there or not there. And asking a question doesn't change that. I didn't know if that was.
I think that comes in the job description, John. When you look at that job description and you look at the people management, relationships with stakeholders, and community representative, those are all three attributes that we've got listed in the job description. And I think there are going to be some intangibles that are.
Does that fall into an intangible?
I think it does.
I think it does, probably, yeah.
I mean, it's something that, it's, in law school, we always had these questions about, pornography cases were always a clever case to discuss, and they would say, well, how do you know it's pornography? Well, you know it when you see it.
Understood.
So, I mean, I hate to use that as an example, but.
It's okay, you just did.
Communicating. Communicating. Well, and I think we'll be able to tell a lot about that, about how they answer questions in this very high-pressure situation they're going to be in.
Yeah, and I think over on page 3, when we're talking about, it's under the heading of external relationships, that
Right.
the old 11, the new 12, where we mention stakeholders and ratepayers. I think that to some extent, the way that they answer that question will kind of tell us whether they really thought about it, what all they discussed when they discussed that question. Will kind of tell us how much they've thought about it and whether or not they really get how deep that communication has got to go. I think we'll be able to
I think you're right.
overall, but I think also specifically in that question, it's not specifically asking it, because it's kind of like one of those questions you don't want to say, well, tell us how you manage this, then they're going to tell you exactly that. But if you just ask them more openly, what do you think it's important to manage, and they go to where you were hoping they'd go to, I think that's going to tell you a little bit more about their understanding of what they need to really do the job.
I think that the delivery may be more important than the substantive answer.
Yeah.
In page 1 under corporate, that's alluded to in the subs, so
Yeah.
somebody may bring it up there or something.
Okay.
Anything else? Anybody else have any other thoughts, Jerry?
No, well, actually, one that did pop in. We've got workforce, on the new question 3, we've got workforce, diversity, safety, financial. Are those just notes for us to
No,
pay
those are
attention
just,
to? We're not
you
gonna-
just jump off and say, well, let me ask you that.
Okay.
Hypothetical.
Yeah, first to see what they address and then to do follow-up if they don't.
But you wouldn't ask about every one
Well,
of these.
that's why I was,
No.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure we were.
This is just to be conversational in case it's a dud
Okay.
answer.
Yeah, but if you, if you have an uncooperative witness in your position, they answer yes, then no other.
That's what their lawyer told them to do.
Give us your
One
assessment
word answer.
of the current state, good.
It's fine.
It's fine. I think this has been a helpful conversation.
So they will not see, they will not,
No.
Not
No
silly
one, no
question.
one has access to the questions but me, and I hope that you all would maintain that way. I have been password protected, so I've tried to be as fair as I can be with each candidate, and that is that they don't have access. I hope we are able to maintain that for the integrity of the process.
Well, for our purposes today, to sum up our conversations here, we are holding the following dates for interviews of the candidates for President and CEO, August 13, 14, and 15. The dates and times for those meetings will be made available through the KUB website to reflect what was decided today. And you will get an email reminder with regard to those as well. Is there any other business or comments from the commissioners? I know we've got one member of the public here. Did you want to address us today?
No.
Thank you for coming. If we have no further business, then this meeting is adjourned.